Azorius Delver.
Seen this one on camera a few times this weekend.
We have. It's been pretty popular. Now, I'm interested in this. So, when we saw some of these blue mirrors earlier, what I was surprised about is how much the creatures can resolve, the creatures and planeswalkers. You know, a lot of the ways that people fight with counter magic are things like Spell Pierce, are things like Flusterstorm. I'm wondering whether that's why a deck like Thief of Sanity is doing well.
Right, and even out of the Storm decks, we're seeing Duress over Cabal Therapy. That's not to say that that's the card they're trying to target. It's more to say that in Legacy, there's sort of an overarching lean into combating the non-creature spells.
Right.
We're really just not seeing as many Baleful Strixes as we were seeing this time 6 months ago.
And against a Delver deck, Baleful Strix is going to be a pretty good card.
Right, and, not that Haversat's necessarily playing any of those, but Briksa does have a bunch of those, and what Haversat does have that I want to just draw some attention to is 4 copies of True Name Nemesis.
All right.
He knows what he is about. He knows what is going to win these creature mirrors, and it is a 3-1 Progenitus.
Both players making lands to begin with. If we look at that 3-1, Rudy's deck with 2 main deck answers. He has 1 copy of the Liana of the Veil and 1 copy of Diabolic Edict. That's it for interacting with True Name once it's in play.
Exactly, and honestly, there's a point where Thief of Sanity can take as many cards as Briksa wants, but it's going to lose the race.
Right. Still a ponder again from Jacob. That's been the only play so far, as we're on the 3rd turn of the game. If things continue in just a land-go fashion, do you have a feeling for who's going to be ahead here?
Eventually, Briksa would end up winning from that point. His cards are just a little bit more powerful. They all end up being worth more than 1 card on their face, and that just helps him keep the gas coming throughout a longer game.
Yeah, he's a for him to Turok deck, actually.
Of course he is.
I mean, it's mid-range, right? That makes sense.
Exactly. Between that, Baleful Strix, and even Snapcaster Mage, there's just this host of kind of lower-to-the-ground things that are all going to be a 2-for-1.
First play from turn 3, Rudy is a copy of Baleful Strix. Just a cheap little way to get on the board. Leaves up another mana still. See whether Jacob fights over this. Unclear if he's going to.
If it's low cost to do so, something like a Spell Snare, it's probably something that you're very much in the market for doing. But if you have a way to just pick one off the board, then this Umezawa's Jetty that's hanging out in Haversat's hand is going to mop up Baleful Strixes just fine.
Looks like it's going to be Brainstorm from Haversat. I was wondering about that 1-mana play. He does have 1 copy of Spell Snare, a 1-1 split on Spell Snare, Spell Pierce, and actually 2 Flusterstorms. I think that's kind of what I was getting at earlier when I said it's a good format for Thief of Sanity. He's got 4 1-mana counter spells, and none of it really answered creatures. He's not good against them.
Exactly. There are the 4 Swords to Plowshares, and then Umezawa's Jetty.
Yeah.
And those are the answers. Oh, there's a Council's Judgment.
Okay.
Let's be fair. We are up to 5 total cards that answer a resolved win.
Yeah. I'm going to say Jace the Mind Sculptor, but he doesn't actually have any in the list today. Jacob doesn't. Rudy does. This is actually different. We saw the Kevin Jones and Harlan Fear list actually was playing Jace.
Right, and this is just Haversat has decided that he just wants to kill people.
Yeah, it's all True Names. He has 4.
Exactly, and I can respect that. That card plays much better with the equipment package that the Stoneforge Mystic affords the Azorius Delver deck than Jace does. Jace is better with the Stoneforges, but if you have that many Stoneforges doing their thing, it's hard to imagine you're not already in a pretty okay spot.
Brainstorm from Rudy, turn 4 here. Picked up a Thief of Sanity. I wonder seeing when he'll actually go for it. I mean, you expect the first one will trade with the Swords to Plowshares. Well, especially after so many cantrips.
Exactly, and we have seen one already get cast on a Baleful Strix, and that's something that just implies that Jacob has a glut of them in his hand, right? You're not just blowing that on any random 1/1 if you only have 1 Swords to Plowshares. Maybe,
I mean, so let's say you don't know that Rudy has Thief of Sanity, which makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, it's not a card that's on most players' radar.
Sure.
Out of a Dimir deck like this, What creatures would you expect Rudy to be playing?
Honestly, there are so many different versions of the Baleful Strix decks, it's hard to say for sure, but Gurmag Angler is one that's going to frequently be on your radar. Maybe Leovold if you put Briksa on any of the Sultai decks. There are things that you specifically want to Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, those are worth saving it for. Yeah, if you think I think I was getting as if you think his deck is only Snapcasters and Strixes, it makes sense. But yeah, with something like Gurmag Angler being such a possibility, it probably does mean he has a second one.
Exactly, and with the 2 Deltas Underground Sea and then Basic Island, you're unlikely to put it on one of the 4-color million-card grind fests.
Yeah. So Jacob actually made his own play. It was Stoneforge Mystic. It found Batterskull. Now Rudy did cast a Fatal Push on the Mystic, but still a 2-for-1 for Haversat.
And we're in the territory where you can just start hard casting the Batterskull.
Absolutely. Because Rudy's deck is a mid-range deck, he actually has very little counter magic. It's 4 Force of Will, 1 copy of Counterspell, and that's it. It's actually a lot more similar to something like a Shardless Sultai deck. No green cards, but when you look at his interaction, it's 2 Thoughtseize, 1 Diabolic Edict, 4 Hymn to Turok instead of counter magic. So Batterskull is pretty difficult once it's on the board to deal with.
Exactly, and here instead of Thief of Sanity is acting as your card advantage engine rather than Shardless Agent. And we've seen a lot of these decks tend to gravitate away from the things that you want to kill your opponent with, like Tarmogoyf, Gurmag Angler, etc. Because we saw just from the check pile, the 4-color good stuff grindy deck that I mentioned before, those decks just didn't even have ways to kill people, and they just, you dealt 20 damage eventually, and that was good enough.
Now that Death Rate's gone, Tarmogoyf is pretty bad. The reasons to play green in your Sultai deck are just getting less and less.
Exactly.
Rudy casts Baleful Strix on his turn, Wastelands Jacob down to 4 mana, and actually Jacob doesn't have the 5th, so instead of making Batterskull, he has to just make Jite and pass.
Right.
Looks like a slight advantage now to Briksa.
Right, and this is a spot where Briksa is going to have to Force of Will this Batterskull more than likely, but he'd like to delay it a little bit if he can, because ideally you'd much rather counterspell it or just hard cast a Force of Will rather than discarding an extra card when card advantage is the fight that you're fighting.
I was going to ask, the 5 mana Force of Will is pretty good in this matchup, but the pitched one isn't.
Exactly. No one's dying on turn 3. So you don't want to have to discard an extra card for Force of Will.
Rudy goes on the attack, and now his pickup for the turn was Hymn to Turok. Yeah, and actually, I feel like this should inform Jacob if he didn't know the matchup already. Hymn to Turok makes it feel like there's no counter magic in the deck.
Exactly. This is the spot where the disruption is a lot more proactive.
Yeah, this kind of tells you there's no spell snare because you don't you pick it's a one or the other sort of thing.
Exactly. This is the spot where you either play your Thoughtseizes, your Hymn to Toroks, etc., or you play Daze, Spell Pierce, Spell Snare, those types of cards.
Well, Jacob will snare the Hymn to Turok. Does not want to lose 2 random cards just yet. Then we pass back. Rudy leaving up counterspell mana of his own. Among the cards in his hand, he has Force of Will, Brainstorm, Thief of Sanity, Snapcaster Mage, Fatal Push, a lot at the ready for Briksa.
Whose name?
True name Nemesis to play from Jacob. And Rudy doesn't force.
No, he has a Diabolic Edict in his hand.
Okay, that's better. The main deck, one of his 2 main deck answers. He'll cast Diabolic Edict. We'll see whether Haversat does. He only plays 1 spell snare, so it's not going to get snared. Maybe piercing it? That seems unlikely.
Right, the things that we'd be looking for here, maybe he's trying to brainstorm into a Force of Will or something like that in order to just protect the True Name Nemesis.
Flusterstorm. Storm is 2. Now, he also does play Daze. Flusterstorm, remembering a counter where it's really hard to fight back against one of these. Rudy pays, and then I think Daze is going to be the follow-up. Yeah, Jacob and Rudy fighting again with Force of Will on the way back, pitching Baleful Strix. That's a pretty big commitment. Rudy's really respecting True Name here.
Right, and this is the spot where naturally you want your storm count with Flusterstorm to be as high as possible.
Yeah.
But if you're making him pay the 1 extra anyway on the days, it would have kind of just been a wash if you had dazed before you Flusterstormed.
Does Jacob have the follow-up True Name? Maybe not. Here's Ponder. I think it's interesting. Rudy, look how he's valuing Thief of Sanity. He actually pitched Baleful Strix instead of Thief there. Really shows that he wants to cast the Thief at some point.
Right, so those kinds of cards that you need to connect, you see this in the modern Jund deck pretty frequently, where the Jund deck tries to trade as many resources as possible, and when the dust clears, there's a Liliana left over. Or in this case, there's Thief of Sanity left over. Whatever card it is that's going to put the game out of reach for your opponent, you want to be the last thing, because that makes it less likely that your opponent actually has the resources to answer that card, because everything else has already been whittled down.
Jacob keeps on top with Ponder, and we'll go for Delver of Secrets. Something that can link that GT up to. Now, I believe Rudy still has a Fatal Push from much earlier in the game. Snapcaster Mage from Rudy. Well,
that's a Fatal Push.
That's a Hymn to Turok.
Oh.
No, that last land, that's the Fatal Push. He wants 2 cards out of Jacob's hand. He wants Jacob to pay 2 mana to equip, and then he wants to Fatal Push it.
Ooh. Batterskull hits the bed.
Batterskull gone.
That's bad for Jacob.
Yeah, I mean, right, it's a great card in the matchup. To be fair, Jacob only has 3 lands, so I guess. But Brainstorm off the top, and now Rudy uses Fatal Push. Clears the board again. And the mid-range deck, just a stack of 2-for-1s. I remember when I used to see, it still plays a lot to me like Shardless when looking at Rudy's deck. When you'd see like these Shardless versus Delver matchups, if the games went late, this would start to happen.
Exactly. Here we see Briksa's only, quote-unquote, only up a couple of raw resources that matter.
Yeah.
But in the course of a long game, when you factor in that those cards are going to be worth 2 cards when they resolve, Briksa's actually very far ahead here.
Yeah. I guess better comparison. Feels like Shardless versus Stoneblade 2019 version. It is a true name from Jacob.
That plays.
Rudy got rid of his Snapcaster Mage, so he can't Snapcaster that Diabolic Edict unless he finds it right here off the Brainstorm. He plays 2 more Snapcasters. Did he find one? I don't know that he did.
He's fetching pretty quickly.
Okay. Liliana of the Veil would work as well.
Right. And this is kind of what we were talking about earlier in the game, where as grindy as Rudy might be, it doesn't matter how many cards you have if you die.
He plays Thief of Sanity and passes. This feels like a misstep on Rudy's side, because if this connects, nothing else matters.
Exactly, because then he just gets to kill the Thief, and
everything dies.
Exactly.
And the 3 damage is going to connect. There's GT counters. And Thief of Sanity is dead. Rudy.
Ooh, you see Jacob just kind of relieved, going, oh my god, it worked.
Yeah. He's got a couple more turns to find. That's Liliana the Veil. That's going to do it.
My
that was
gosh.
his other answer. -2 takes care of it. And his other draw was Thief of Sanity.
What a world.
Whoa. A huge swing back to Briksa. And, yeah, Jacob picks up the cards. There's no way out here.
That's it.
Only 2 main deck answers for Rudy to the card. He'd already used one, picks up the other one, and the win.
Good grief. That was a turnaround. That's how it works. That's how you win games.
Rudy getting it done. And it's going to get better outside because he's got a lot more answers to True Name in here. Just a lot.
How many?
I see at least there's 3 more. There's 3 more.
To the slaughter.
To the slaughter. Marsh casualties.
Oh, where has my Gossamer gone?
Is that?
It's the flavor text.
Okay, that's the flavor text.
Slaughter.
It's like me like, why?
It's the name of the sheep.
Okay,
there's a little claw
yeah.
going for the sheep.
Yeah.
Where has my Gossamer gone?
I was thinking Gossamer Phantasm, and then I was like, that's a card that has Gossamer in it, but that's nothing to do with
Planar Chaos.
Yeah, I was like, that's not even in Innistrad.
No, it's not.
Looking to the sideboard. So Rudy will go for those extra copies of ways to answer True Name Nemesis. Anything else you like?
Other than that, you can maybe end up looking at something like Thoughtseize if you wanted to try and tag some of the 2-for-1s in Jacob's deck, since the Jacob's power cards are so difficult to interact with once they hit the battlefield. But for the most part, Rudy's probably just trying to do the same thing this game. He might be trying to shave on some Force of Wills or something to that effect, but Hand Disruption is kind of bad when you're in a top deck war against these decks, so it's unlikely that he looks to bring in more of that effect.
So we just started a new month here. It is now March, which means Game Night has a new promo that is going to be the Vini Vidi Armadici. You can get tokens and sleeves for playing as prizes just for playing in tournaments near you. You can find a location near you at starcitygames.com/game night.
It's no Perdokin, but it's fine, I guess.
We can't always be January.
I just wanted to be cats every time.
What was the other name they had of it? They were doing. We were doing the trivia. It was great. It was great. It was a wrong answer. The wrong answers on those are great.
Kamehame cat.
Okay.
I don't even know if that was one of them. I'm now just trying to think of cat puns for that type of thing.
It's for the armadillo. All right. On Jacob's side, he can two disenchant, a rest in peace, a surgical extraction, containment priest, back to basics, meddling mage, counterbalance, hydroblast, path to exile, Caracas, supreme verdict, engineer explosives, Teferi, and Vendilion click. I feel like he wants to try to play the mid-range game. He doesn't have too many cards to do it with.
I mean, honestly, he has half the format in his sideboard.
Yeah.
So you can kind of do whatever he wants, but most of what you're trying to do is just bring in some more 2-for-1s. You get to shave on your own Force of Wills, which are kind of a liability in this matchup. If you're trying to fight 2-for-1s, you don't want to 1-for-2 yourself a bunch. Right. So bringing in the Vendilion click is something that can pressure things like Liliana or even just...
You want to board out the Force of Wills, right?
Right, exactly. They attack Planeswalker as well. They block Thief of Sanity, and Jacob is very interested in that.
He's already seen 2 of them in Rudy's list. At that point, you don't know how many there are.
There's a few, though.
Yeah.
2 is a big signal.
Yeah. Yeah, Teferi would be great if he can get one onto the battlefield. Will win the game.
Right, and seeing Wasteland from Rudy last game, we're likely going to see Jacob lean a little bit more into his basic lands.
Yeah. Much like a Shardless deck, Rudy is on 2 Wasteland, which is kind of, I used to see that out of these style of decks. They're pretty interested in lands, but they do want to answer things like, Grove of the Burn Willows, Dark Depths, Cloud Post. But they're not trying to, I remember Wasteland their opponent's mana out, not like a Delver deck.
Exactly. They're checking boxes. They're trying to answer cards more than they're trying to win the mana denial strategy.
I know I played some Shardless back when it was a deck, and one of the things I remember learning was in a matchup like this, you often just don't use your Wastelands. Like if you use it just when you draw it, that's oftentimes wrong.
Yep. Yeah. The idea is if you have more 2-for-1s than your opponent, your mana is going to be worth more than theirs because your spells are worth more than theirs.
Even if it's colorless.
Exactly. So you just want to make sure that you can cast as many spells as possible.
Turn 1 Delver from Jacob. Hits for 1, plays Ponder. Now, how do you feel about Rudy's Force of Wills? Because Haversat is a 4 True Name Nemesis deck. Force of Will terrible here, but can Rudy board them all out?
It's a weird spot. A lot of what he's probably doing is cutting Force of Will, his True Name answer, for
different ones.
Other True Name answers that don't cost 2 full cards.
So that's why we make room for To the Slaughter, the Marsh Casualties.
Exactly.
Okay. Situation again, because that was not a transform Delver, Marsh Casualties would be an answer on this board if Rudy has one.
Ooh, that's a big game.
Yeah, 2 mana.
2 mana kill your 1-drop? Love it. Wait. No, I don't.
I usually like it being the other way around. I like 1 mana kill your 2-drop.
This is worse than a Lava Spike.
That's a bar.
I've changed my mind. I love the Marsh Casualties.
Okay, we like it again now as he plays another Delver?
Now that it is 2 mana, kill a 1 mana spell and a 1 mana spell, big
the mana
fan
trade's
of
even, so now it's fine.
Exactly. It's basically just a 2-for-2.
I like evaluating all trades on mana.
Oh, no.
Not cards.
Oh, no.
Is that it? Is that the Marsh Casualties? Oh, it's a Dismember.
Ooh, Jacob takes those.
That's
Gotta
fine.
take those.
Gets 2 Underground Seas for it. No fear of back to basics. There's one in Jacob's sideboard. I doubt he boarded it in.
There's always this fun game of cat and mouse where back to basics is bad against you, so you don't have to respect it.
Yeah.
But if you don't think your opponent's going to respect it, sometimes you get them for free.
Rudy is a 5 basic land deck, and Jacob is
also 5.
Okay.
But when you see Jacob fetch up a Tundra, you can assume back to basics is not coming anytime soon.
Well, the other Delver transforms, and Jacob follows up with Stoneforge Mystic. And look at this, getting Umezawa's Jite.
You just want to make sure that you're able to pick off things like Baleful Strix. And it's also just a difficult permanent type for Briksa to interact with.
Yeah, blue and black card's not great against artifacts.
Exactly. So if you can just develop a Umezawa's Jitte, have it sit with a couple of counters on it, then you just have Baleful Strix, Snapcaster Mage, etc. checked preemptively.
So I will say this is the kind of board where, though I love the Rudy's playing Thief of Sanity, I'm not impressed by it right here.
Are you impressed by Liliana the Veil?
No, but it's going to be his play. It'll -2. It'll probably get rid of, I don't know.
It depends on what's in Jacob's hand. He may have searched up the Umezawa's Jitte if he already has Batterskull in his hand.
Okay, and in that case, he'll keep Stoneforge for sure.
Exactly, but the way he's thinking about this leads me to believe that he just wants to use Umezawa's Jitte, and at that point, Stoneforge isn't offering any kind of mana discount, so he's probably looking to just discard it, or sacrifice it, rather.
Jacobs takes a while in this decision, decides to get rid of Insectile Aberration. He is behind right now because of that missed land drop. This is still a blue mirror. Land drops matter, and you see he leads on Brainstorm here to really reflect that.
Right, and land drops do matter to a point, but it's not like Rudy has you under any kind of pressure, so missing one land drop is probably going to be fine. It's if he missed several land drops that he needs to start worrying.
He's going to miss several. He led on the Brainstorm, and he's locked off it. No fetch, no land.
Oh, God.
Big danger. He actually, though, might be able to tread water for a bit. He's actually kept in some number of Force of Will and picked one up here. He has multiple Swords to Plowshares and a Force of Will, so he may be able to bat Rudy's threats back for a while here.
And there is a draw to this, right? Force of Will, oh no, Force of Will on a Hymn to Torok. It's still going to be a 2-for-1, but you pick the 2 that it takes.
Yeah, but now things have gotten tougher because Rudy had a Wasteland and wastes away his white mana source and makes Thief of Sanity. And there's not a white mana source on top of the deck.
No, Jacob's probably just going to have to Force of Will this.
It's so gross because you have 2 Swords to Plowshares in your hand. You hate having to force this.
Right, but, you know, honestly, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Right, if you aren't planning to use the cards in your hand anyway, this is giving them value. It doesn't feel very good.
So you can let Thief connect, and then it will unbrainstorm lock you.
Matthias, you're so right.
Yeah,
I'm so glad you're here
line.
To guide me through these plays.
And then you can draw different cards.
That
and
is
lose because Thief of Sanity's connecting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't ever seen Thief of Sanity connect in Legacy. I assume you lose when it happens.
Yeah,
it feels like it.
It's definitely a card that's very similar to Dragon Lord Ashitai, where because of how decks in the format are constructed, if it gets to connect once, it's very unlikely it doesn't connect again because the previous turn they didn't have a way to stop you.
Yeah.
And now you're just up resources to try and protect it. So it's even less likely they can stop you, and the cycle kind of continues
it keeps
from
going.
there.
It's like brainstorming with Jace. Once if I got to the point where I'm brainstorming with Jace, like it's just gonna keep getting worse.
I untapped with Jace.
I untapped with Jace. I'm gonna keep untapping with Jace.
Ah, beats.
I found another Jace, and I found a counter spell. It's gonna just keep happening.
No, you found the Batterskull you put back.
Now, Jacob spent his whole turn there on cantrips, but it looks like he's fixed his mana situation. Brainstormed into a second land, cracked a fetch land, and then cast Preordain. So, as long as nothing too bad happens here, Jacob might be okay. He still has his, well, some number of those Swords to Plowshares from earlier.
Right, and there's a spot where Briksa only has 11 life left. So if Jacob can just put this Batterskull into play, that's a very real clock.
Thoughtseize from Rudy. He's going to go even lower, down to 9.
Well, bad news about Batterskull.
So Stoneforge, Batterskull, Daze, and Swords to Plowshares. He just has to take the Batterskull.
Exactly. You're just never going to be able to answer it otherwise.
So Rudy with Daze, Swords, and Stoneforge. This does mean that the second Thief of Sanity in Rudy's hand is not cleared for takeoff. There's that Sword to Plowshares waiting out for it.
Rudy there trying to weigh if he wanted to develop Baleful Strix and trade for the Daze, but he has so much mana, he just doesn't ever need to let that card be worth anything.
So just going to try to blanket for the game.
Exactly. We see a 2-drop, a 1-drop, and a 3-drop with 4 lands on the battlefield. You know, you don't need to do that.
Jacob casts the other Stoneforge, finds his other equipment, which is Umezawa's Jitte. It's a pretty good board for a Jitte.
Squire beat down.
So Rudy will start with Brainstorm. Did he find him to Turok?
Ooh.
That's an interesting line if Rudy chooses to take it. Because there's a terrible card to hit in Jacob's hand, Daze, and there's a great card to hit, Jitte.
It's
and then
hard
there's a
to
third
even say
one.
if Jitte's even that good. Jacob's kind of choked on mana right now.
Yeah, well, Jitte and Swords are both answers to the Thief. So say like if there's a hymn, if this hits, Swords and GT. Then Rudy can just make Thief of Sanity and ride it to the win. Right, we have Swords, GT, and Daze, and one more. So let's see. First one hits. All right, we'll get to see what the damage is. Swords and Daze, so the GT is still there, but that's going to take a while to get suited up.
A little risky, but you got to take those.
Yeah, I think that was still an above-average him for Rudy.
Right, I agree with you there. And Briksa even has the ability to develop Baleful Strix if he wants to stop respecting Daze.
Interestingly, I want to stand to correct here, the Thief of Sanity is not in Rudy's hand at the moment. He put it. It's one of his top 2 cards from Brainstorm.
Oh, he really doesn't want to shuffle that away.
I don't think so. I mean, if it's interesting, right? But I think he wants to keep that.
Ooh, no
Ponder
shuffle
from
with
Jacob.
Ponder.
Yeah.
That's got to feel pretty good for Jacob.
Swings with 1 Stoneforge. I see what you're up to.
I don't know if I love holding back the Stoneforge Mystic here.
It depends what those top cards are. I mean, you're not too worried about a counterspell.
Right. So if you think your spell's going to resolve anyway, this point is actually worth a lot because if you're attacking for 2 each turn, right, if Rudy were at 5 now and a Jit has 2 counters on it,
lethal.
Then that's 5. That's lethal.
Rudy down to 6 off of fetch land. Starts with Brainstorm. What is he looking for? I guess a kicked Marsh Casualties?
Ooh, that'd be adorable.
That would be really good. He doesn't have too much else to clean this up.
No, at this point, he may just have some leftovers that he doesn't really want anymore.
Snapcaster Mage would be pretty good here.
Snapcaster would be nice. Other Thief of Sanity. It at least blocks. It trades.
A Fatal Push would not be bad. Yeah, Thief plus Fatal Push should work.
Right, and there's a point where even if it feels bad to trade, say, Thief of Sanity for it, then you're just kind of in a spot where you need to make sure that you get value out of your Thief before there are counters on that Umezawa's Jitte.
All right, so Jacob fetches. And Jacob got punished for not fetching main phase. Yeah, so what happened was Jacob fetched. In response, Rudy snapcastered a Dismember, which means that Jacob doesn't get to put the GT into play at all.
And this is one of the things where you get punished for trying to be a little bit too fancy and going, who knows what I'm going to do? But if your opponent knows what you're going to do, maybe you should just set yourself up to do it at the first opportunity.
Now, things are actually still okay for Jacob. You know, Rudy's almost out of cards. They're on about the same number of cards. I think Jacob, because of the GT in his hand, still has the advantage here. But things did get closer. Rudy scored a small victory there.
Right, and there is a spot where Jacob just needs to get out onto the battlefield.
Yeah. Well, here's True Name Nemesis. With Rudy at 3, that's getting onto the battlefield.
That counts.
Yeah. 3 cards for Rudy. Marsh Casualties is one of them.
Oh.
He's going to draw it and kick it. That's -2/-2. Both creatures are gone, and Rudy's now on the attack.
Gotta respect not slow rolling it. And
yeah.
Just going, no, I got it.
There's 1 card in hand. It's GT. He knew he was good to go. So now Jacob going to try to recover. Top card, I think, is a land. He put it up by next to his land pile like it was a land. Yeah, and he'll play the land, play the GT. Empty-handed, Rudy attacks for 2. Can he continue? Rudy will cast Ponder. His hold card is a counterspell, just proper.
Ooh.
And here's Thief of Sanity with counterspell up. That is going to turn the tide here. Jacob, Ponder, that's fine. And we're going to get to see a Thief of Sanity connect as Jacob shuffles.
This shuffle is not good for Haversat. He does have Supreme Verdict in the board. Supreme Verdict could get him back in this game. It's unlikely to be in his deck, but Thief of Sanity is such a scary card that maybe he just wants to make sure that his removal spells are resolving.
Yeah, it's kind of Supreme Verdict or bust here as he says go. And all right, I want to see this card connect in Legacy. Here's 5 damage. Jacob goes down to 8. Top 3 cards.
Dunzo.
Now, to be fair, I don't... True Name Nemesis. Teferi? Woo! All right. Yeah, that seems nice here. He'll cast Teferi, and Jacob's had enough.
I agree.
Wow. And Rudy Briksa 6-0. He is into day 2. Still undefeated. Picks up the win.
Imagine you're